Hello and welcome to SOS Weekly Reviews. I'm Mike alongside.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Vincent. Please like and subscribe.
Please.
Yeah, you got that new ticker feature.
Yeah, that's really neat. I like that.
But it doesn't show our names. And to accomplish the full egotism, we really need both.
That would be ideal.
We just said our names though.
That's true.
Yeah, just flash back and forth. That'll accomplish it.
Oh god.
I like how it kind of picks up where you left off. All right, this is the kind of great content you only get in the video version.
That's right.
Yeah, but
It's going to get cut out.
The audio version where Vince isn't cutting out every 5 seconds.
All right, so before we move into things, I have a quick haul segment, some weird stuff. So I grabbed, it was cheap on Amazon, so I got Mickey Mouse Race to Death Valley. This is volume 2 of the Floyd Gottfredson newspaper strip run.
Do you have volume 1?
No, I don't have volume 1, and in fact, volume 1 is strange, if I'm recalling correctly, because volume 1, you actually have stuff drawn by Walt Disney, which is both cool but also not cool because, I mean, obviously Walt Disney was ultimately not a strip cartoonist.
Yeah.
He was an animator. And so I do have volume. I'm not going to Google it, and I don't remember. I have one later volume. Are you guys familiar at all with Mickey Mouse lore?
No.
Have you ever heard of the Phantom Blot?
He did something on a steamboat once.
Yeah, that is true. But this book's kind of screwed up on the corner.
Yeah, a little bit.
There's a character called the Phantom Blot, and it's like this slightly meta thing where he's like made of ink, maybe, and he's like this creepy, like all black thing that menaces Mickey. And that was originally created for this strip and ran as like a extended storyline. And I have the volume which has that. I don't know if I'll ever get more, but this is basically the beginning, and then I have the best or the most interesting stuff. And so yeah, it's a black and white comic strip written and drawn, or I think at least drawn by Floyd Gottfredson, who did this Mickey Mouse strip for a long ass time. And my other old man arrival is the Golden Age Human Torch omnibus.
Nice.
And then my Kickstarter arrival is Graham Nolan's Monster Island and Return to Monster Island, which the second one was like what he was crowdfunding for, but I get the package deal. They're not super thick, but they're very tall, kind of like European album format, and it's Graham Nolan. Obviously, mainstream people probably know him best from some Batman work and stuff. And there's monsters and dinosaurs and shit. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, that's that. Oh, I at least decided I had some eclectic things this week, so I thought it was a little bit more worth sharing than.
After the holiday, because this is our second to last regular show of the year, is your haul segment going to be like 45 minutes where we're going to have to do a special episode?
No, I don't think so.
No. We're not doing a post-holiday haul. We're not. If we are, it's 2 books. 2 books. That's it.
I mean, the thing is that a lot of
minutes.
I mean, this isn't really true because one of this was Kickstarter, which just was going to arrive when it arrived, and the omnibus I just got like the week it came out. so I could get the discount and everything. But really, like the way I do around the holidays is like I just splurge around it and don't bother like wrapping stuff for myself.
Right.
So like my actual like legitimate like holiday haul, I don't think is actually as crazy as it might sound. And on that note, please like and subscribe, and we will move on to the actual show.
Yeah, please like and subscribe, support us so we can keep making this thrilling content, because I'm sure you all love Vince talking about Mickey Mouse for 3 minutes. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about Peter Parker, Spectacular Spider-Man, number 118. This is our retro book for the week. This is written by Peter David with art by Mike Zeck and Bob McLeod. So this is a real stacked creative team on here. So what's going on? Peter Parker is on his annual "maybe I shouldn't be Spider-Man" bullshit again. When a kid he had helped previously accidentally gets superpowers and melts his dad. So he's on the run, and they talk about calling it X Factor to get this kid, because X Factor deals with mutants. But instead of doing something cool, we get S.H.I.E.L.D. instead. And S.H.I.E.L.D. brings in these mandroids, and the kid thinks they're robots, and so he nearly melts one of those guys also, and Spider-Man saves him. And he gives him this great speech about power and responsibility, of course, because Spider-Man. Throughout the issue, there's a lot of talk about power and responsibility, as you might expect from a Spider-Man comic, especially one where he's struggling with his identity. And so, in a way, that comes to a head when Pete gives his own version of that speech to this kid. And then the kid gets shot full of bullets and dies in his arms. And that's how the issue ends. I liked it a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun. I think Peter David is a great writer. Everything he writes is usually pretty good. So this was a good issue. I was disappointed that X Factor didn't show up. But other than that, like, I don't know. It looked great. It read well. I thoroughly enjoyed it. What do you guys think?
I seem to remember, like, this issue is, like, known, right? Like, it's kind of famous.
I had never heard of it. But apparently Vince had, so I'm a fake fan.
But yeah, Peter. I'm not going to go into talking about Peter David and praising him because he's endlessly great. But I will say, Zeck and McLeod. That's the same artist team that did Kraven's Last Hunt, and I forgot how good of an artist Mike Zeck is. Like, he's really good with Spider-Man.
Super good. Yeah. Zeck's low-key one of my favorite Spider-Man artists.
Yeah, he does some great splash pages of Spider-Man landing on some buildings and some action sequences. Also, he's in the black suit at this point, which, I mean, I'm a sucker for the black suit. I like that costume.
It's so sick.
But, yeah, I think this is a very good issue where it's another winner in the retro book.
Yeah. There's a joke about this guy named Sal who like really hates mutants, and like his partner keeps telling him to shut up. And I thought it could have been really lame, but I thought it played really well. I actually enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think this is a standout issue, but at the same time, and you can kind of tell within the issue that it's part of an arc.
Yes.
Like it's like they're referencing that this Alex Wilcott kid has appeared in previous issues, and I think actually, like if you read the entire arc, this issue is actually like kind of anticlimactic. But if you did what we did and read this issue out of context, it does come off as like one of those great one-off heroic Spider-Man, but like tragic twist endings, which is, I mean, we'll kind of get to some of that kind of storytelling on the later with new books. But yeah, this is a kind of famous issue. I also love how it's both the standalone, it's a conclusion on an arc, it's part of Peter David's run, but there's also tons of continuity reference in here. There's this whole like Foreigner and Kingpin thing, which isn't really relevant to the whole issue, we didn't talk about it much.
I forgot that was in the issue.
That's ultimately setting up like this huge brewing arc with the Foreigner, which lasts like multiple years. And with the Kingpin there's also references to Born Again. There's all kinds of fun stuff. And also, there's references, and this is another arc which, again, maybe you're not familiar with. It's mostly because, again, Marvel has not reprinted a lot of Spectacular and Web of and stuff, but there was this whole literally 2-month period where it was the Spider-Man missing arc, and they referenced that. And if you weren't familiar with arc, you might not even caught the reference. But there's Pete's saying he's not going out as Spider-Man, even though he does a panel later, and one or two other people are like, we haven't seen Spider-Man. And it was this little thing, and so there was in some of the series, basically it allowed there to be a Black Cat solo issue and stuff like that.
Interesting.
And then I want to say, you both said it, but I think Peter David's writing is great, and he's really early on his career here. But there's just I want to say he has a natural dialogue, but I don't think it's really natural. But there's a snappiness, but not in a Bendis way. But the way the Foreigner and Kingpin tit and tat with each other, it's all very clever. And obviously, I think his voice for Spidey is really great. He balances that quippy attitude really well, and not just in quips where it's when he punches someone, he makes a dumb joke. And then back to trivia stuff. If you notice, oftentimes in issues of this era, you would expect the credits on the opening splash page or something like that, which is not always necessarily the first page by this era, but that's where you'd expect them. You don't get the credits for this until the very end, and then you're like, oh, maybe they put it there because it's a dramatic issue and it's a dramatic ending, so black panel with the credits. Actually, Alex Wolcott was not supposed to die in this issue, and reportedly that final panel was not supposed to be black with the credits. The final panel was supposed to, when Pete is Alex, there was supposed to be some indication that the kid was alive. And the person who nixed that was editor Christopher Priest.
Oh, cool. Good call on his part, because otherwise I think this would be a pretty forgettable issue.
Well, here's the thing, and then on that note, because there is drama to it. The kid dies, even though it's it's fucked up to see a kid die, but that's the dramatic part, and that's the point of the issue. But then bringing it back, this kid shows back up and hangs out with Hulk in Peter David's Hulk run for one issue, so he's not dead.
Well, fine, whatever. It was a good issue. I liked it.
Yeah, it was great.
We didn't read that this week.
Oops.
Did we tell this? We didn't read it this week.
I saw it, but
you would know that you didn't. So
I didn't see a conclusive statement. Okay, so Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man number 13. This is 13, right?
14.
14.
Man, you are off your game today.
Wow, 2 weeks in a row, fucking up issue numbers.
All right, number 14. This is the final issue of the series. I feel I don't know if it was last issue or if I actually missed one, but a while back there was a really messy issue. But we're back on track with just 2 artists, which at first seems bad, but it's Ken Lashley who has done some of the main art in this series, and then Marguerite Sauvage is here just to do a flashback. And it's totally it works artistically. It's not fill in or trading spots and stuff. And the flashback kicks it off with Peter as a kid with May and Ben. And there's limited coloring, which I think is a choice used a lot of times for flashbacks and things like that. And I like Marguerite Sauvage's depiction of Aunt May. She's both very attractive and looks young, but also you can I think you can see how this face of hers and everything and her hair kind of evolves and ages into the modern depiction of Aunt May. Not like Steve Ditko, wrinkly, crazy Aunt May, but the way they portray her nowadays.
Yeah.
Though Aunt May's a redhead, right?
I don't remember.
Obviously, obviously she always has, grayed or white hair, and the only thing that I could think to reference, I'm sure there are tons of other flashbacks that I could go to, but I went to Trouble, and
of course it's a Trouble, yeah.
She has stark red hair in Trouble, which I don't know if that's accurate. But
in my own headcanon, Aunt May was born 90 years old, and that's it.
If she does have stark red hair, I feel like they could have gone a little bit heavier with the coloring on her hair. Like she comes off as if she's always been a platinum blonde or something. And then the main story is that May is undergoing surgery for her cancer diagnosis stuff. Again, I think I skipped an issue, but because I don't remember when they set up this is what she's getting done and etc.
They did. I think that was amazing.
Okay. And Pete promises to be there when she wakes up, which he's paralleling something that she did when he was a kid to comfort him. And a power outage happens, so he's like, damn it, I will be back, but I got to swing out. And he runs into Shocker quickly, but then literally every other hero shows up. The ones that are relevant to this book, like Johnny Storm, and then some just quick cameos of other characters in the universe. This Rumor character, is that a creation for this run? I assume that's in the first half that I didn't read.
The Rumor has been throughout the entire thing.
Okay, I don't remember Rumor at all.
She's a creation for Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, and she's kind of lame. I don't know. She's fine.
Yeah. But so they're dealing with the immediate effects of the blackout because I guess people are rioting and there are certain issues obviously caused by the blackout. And Pete figures out the culprit kind of just by happenstance. And it's cool because it's a commuter cometh type of moment initially, which is a Peter David thing. This kid's deep in the burrows, and it's just this kid who's a genius orphan and is not really sure what to do with his life and everything, and he's causing a blackout for kicks. His motivation is never entirely clear. I think he's just trolling, but in the very beginning of the issue, when there's when he disseminates a message, it seems like he has some kind of motivation, but I don't think he does. And basically Pete has a serious heart to heart with him and is like, hey, you're a kid. I know what kind of, I know what it feels like to feel alone and not have direction and blah, blah, blah. And I know what, to be smart and everything. And also just for nerdy convenience, this kid happens to be 15 years old, which was the age that Peter was when he was bit by the spider and became Spider-Man. And so Pete, without actually telling the kid what his situation is, he's like, I need you to stop fucking around with this blackout thing. There's something serious in my life. And the kid's like, yeah, you're Spider-Man. Call it off. And Pete's gonna Spider-Man is gonna eventually help this kid not go to juvie for a long ass time for putting all of New York City in blackout. And Pete gets back in time, and May wakes up, and they're both crying. And I think it's a great standalone issue, while also being a great conclusion of this run.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there's not a lot resolved. And I think there's a tiny bit of parallel to the retro book, because this kid, I feel like it's an interesting character. He's given a little bit of setup, and it works the way it ends, but also just depending on what kind of reader you are, I do feel I would be okay with seeing this kid again popping up in Amazing Spider-Man and actually seeing Spider-Man try and help him not get the full brunt of the law and maybe set him up with something down the line or keep a watch on him. Whether that's a couple months from now or 3 years from now, cool thing to reference. And at the same time, I'm not fully sure the condition of Aunt May, because there's no exposition after she wakes up. You presume everything went well, but what does that mean?
Right.
Especially when earlier in the run, they basically did echoes of One More Day, where it was this super serious thing where it's no, she's fucked. And I don't know how we got from that to this, and then where we go next with anime.
Right. As far as this kid's motivation, I thought that it kind of mirrored the beginning short about when Peter was a child. I think the idea is that this kid is dealing with the same sort of anger because he's lost his parents and the foster systems kind of failed him, and so he's lashing out. That's basically the motivation, right?
I guess. I mean,
I think the idea is that he's sort of like a I don't know, a parallel to Pete in that where Pete became Spider-Man and used his, I guess, pain from Spider-Man. This kid has used it to take out the power in New York just because he can.
Yeah.
I thought this was a solid issue. It proved that Tom Taylor can write pretty good one-offs, and that's about it in terms of Spider-Man at least. Because the Spider Bite one and the Mary Jane one that he did, the 3 one-offs throughout the entire run, have all been really good. And then the rest of the book has been mediocre at best.
Tom Taylor does a editorial in the back of the page, as the writer does at the end of a run.
Yeah.
And also the editor. And it's like not super interesting because it wasn't a super long run. So it's not like he's like, oh, wow, I've been so far. You made it 13 issues and they were probably double shipping.
Right.
But they make a comment where it's like, it's the secondary title. We weren't going to go for the headlines. But like ultimately, like that Spider Bite thing was like the biggest clickbait Spider-Man thing of the year, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, it was good. I mean, I didn't follow every single issue, so I can't say I'm necessarily sad to see this go. But they'll have another.
I did read every issue, and I'm not sad to see it go. And like, it was better than Dan Slott's Amazing Spider-Man, especially the post-Superior stuff. But that's not saying anything.
And we have slightly different opinions, but also I feel like it's very hard to compare 13 issues to like a 150 issue run with multiple periods and status quo shifts and everything.
I think ultimately this run is going to be forgotten, except for maybe Spider-Bite.
Well, as a one-off story, but it'll be comparable to just like forgotten like good runs, like Peter David on Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man in the 2000s, or even like higher profile stuff like Paul Jenkins and Spectacular Spider-Man.
Yeah, I would argue Jenkins' Spectacular isn't quite as forgotten, but whatever, that's semantics. You're right.
All right. I have the wrong banner on.
Yes,
okay, on to this. Mike gets to talk about it.
Yeah. I'm God, what a mess this book is.
Yeah,
so
right.
Spider-Man 2099, number 1. The whole issue is just Miguel O'Hara's backstory. We only see him as Spider-Man in 2 panels, and so he's just trying to get away from working at Alchemex, trying to find a new way to get the Rapture drug, which I guess stops himself from going crazy. I've never heard of the Rapture drug ever with Miguel O'Hara. So, and then we see his brother for a bit and like other bit players, and then at the end he has like this breakdown and we see flashes of all the 2099 characters. I have no idea what's going on or what point this even is. Like it's so messy and muddled. This 2099 event can end any time it pleases because it's so stupid.
So I haven't read Miguel O'Hara's origin in a long time. I don't remember the drug. I don't remember the outcast thing. Is this a retread of his origin, or is it like because times changed or something? Is it a new origin for Miguel O'Hara? I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening in this event.
Yeah, I don't know either. Again, we're all slightly at a disadvantage because we're not that familiar with 2099.
Right.
it seems different, and then there's that moment towards the end where like memories or visions start phasing in of like the recognizable 2099 to me, or at least the characters. And we did read X-Men 2099 #1 earlier. So, and you see them for one panel, but I think it's a totally, like, this has to be an alternate, and then there's like an old Miguel. So I think this is like the second and third layer of fake 2099. And I think that goes back to the whole setup, which was not clear, but where Miguel actually meets Peter not for the first time, but meets him in the beginning of this arc and is like, and claims, I'm your actual future and blah, blah, blah. My future's fucked up. And so I guess this is 2099, but it's messed up due to whatever in the present. But Miguel is having visions of the proper 2099.
Right. And then old Miguel is maybe proper Miguel, maybe. But this event's just, I'm so done with this damn event. I don't care. I've never cared about 2099 to begin with, and this story is convoluted and unnecessary. I just want Nick Spencer to go back to writing Spider-Man instead of this, whatever this is. I'm done with it.
Yeah, all right. Batman, I guess we're in Batman corner now. Batman's Grave #3, Warren Ellis, Brian Hitch. Batman is continuing tracking the businessmen from the last issue. He's running forensics and like data mines for where his money was going. And he sees that his money is going to offshore accounts and to like his own personal psychiatrist. So he goes to his mansion to pay him a visit to figure out what's going on with that. And he finds him dead with a bunch of pills around him, and he's attacked by like some like assassin and like bunch of like stupid armor. Basically think any cyber assassin. That's what it looks like. And then we get the whole half issue is like this beautiful fight sequence with Hitch and the Batman fighting off the assassin. And then Batman's able to basically steal this man's Alexa device, which in this version is like a Lex Luthor home device. And he's able to hack into it, and it's like been sending him cryptic messages to like have him go crazy and kill himself. So the next course of action for him is he's going to pay a visit to the psychiatrist. This is good, but each issue is so fragmented and slow, and it's 12 issues. This is going to be much better when it's all said and done and I can read it all at once, because so little happens in every issue. There's not enough to keep me coming back. So while good, I'm going to read the rest of this when it's all collected.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I know he did innovate on this style alongside people like Bendis, but I feel like Warren Ellis's recent thing is like super decompression, because he also did that with the Wildstorm, where that was 24 issues, and I'm sure that did not move super fast. But apparently people have been liking his recent Return to Big Two stuff, even if it's off to the corner.
I mean, I like that it's like hardcore detective Batman. It seems like a much younger Batman too, but like at the same time, you have to have something developing to keep me coming back for each issue.
All right, I'm going to talk about a different kind of mess. Dark Knight Returns, The Golden Child, written by Frank Miller, art by Raphael Grandpa. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not really that familiar with him. I don't know if he's like, well, clearly he's some kind of European or maybe South American guy, but I'm sure he has like European work that I don't know about. But apparently he's a big deal. Like, people were excited for this. And the art is cool. It's like, I don't know how to describe it. It's got like a tiny bit of like a Frank Quitely, but like mixed with, it's like Frank Quitely and Frank Miller or something. I don't know how to describe it. But this is in the Millerverse of Batman, I guess taking place after DK3, even though Miller like half wrote that. And Miller described this as his like response to that. But there's nothing really meta here that nothing meta in response to comics here. But now, I think as of this issue, or maybe it was teased in DK3, Jonathan Kent exists in Millerverse, and he's like it's hard to say because maybe the artist is like being a little iffy with anatomy and stuff, but he's like a 3-year-old or something in the beginning of this, and he's a little detached and a little edgy, but like not in like a aggressive or mean way. He's just kind of like the uber powerful, like weird kid.
Wait. Dark Knight Superman marries Wonder Woman, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Is John her kid?
Yeah, because Lois is dead by that point.
All right, whatever.
I mean, it's not like explicitly compared. I mean, his name is Jonathan, so, and his father is Superman, so it's got to be Jonathan Kent. But it's not like they're necessarily trying to directly compare to the Tomasi and Gleason creation, besides the very obvious identical name. But his father and sister have high hopes for him, but kind of from different perspectives. And then for the rest of the issue, we don't see Superman at all, once there's a little bit of a time skip. And we don't see Batman at all, but he's still alive too, because Carrie texts him. But his sister, Laura, named after Clark's biological mother, Laura, who has a Superman logo on her chest but wears a leather jacket with a Wonder Woman logo on her back. She is a fucking... Oh, also she has blue hair. She is a fucking jerk and really looks down on humans. She's just like a terrible person. And then the issue really gets relevant when they come across a riot, which is just explicitly in response to Trump's election, presumably 2020. And this riot split between Batman and Joker copycats. And Carrie Kelly as Batwoman shows up and uses like biological weapons. It's kind of unclear because she makes reference to them being like hallucinogens or like something that you would actually think of the Joker to use, but also like once they make contact with people, they like go like all Akira, like this pink like growths or something developing on them. It's very strange. And I guess Carrie Kelly just has the rep that she puts Lara in line. And it turns out that Joker, who is totally dead, so it's either like a new version of Joker or a copycat Joker who's like established himself, but is collaborating with Darkseid. But Darkseid also uses the word trickster once, which could be literal, and the trickster is taking on the Joker's identity, or it could be not at all, and it's just, he's a Joker. And Darkseid gets beat up by the two super children. They like reverse. Jonathan blasts him with something, and then Lara manages to reverse his Omega beams back on him, which basically results in a nuke, and he dies. And then it starts raining blood. But he's Darkseid, and it's hard to kill Darkseid, so he's like reborn in a star, and a star explodes, and suddenly he's back on Earth. And then there's kind of like an aside where Carrie Kelly takes down this new Joker in an arcade, and they say something like there are arcades on every block, and I'm like, this is so strange. I don't understand it, but it's an opportunity for this like 2 pages of like really cool coloring with and on top of Grandpa's very unique art, where they're in this arcade and lights go off, but there's a little bit of the neon from the cabinets and stuff, and like Joker's like eyes are all red and bugged out and stuff. Pretty cool sequence. Darkseid is back. John is like super powerful, so he uses neutron vision instead of like whatever, like heat vision or whatever Superman usually has. He can use like, I don't know what neutron vision means, but they mess up Darkseid again, but actually don't kill him now. And then John is like, I'm gonna disappear, and he takes Lara with him, and they just like disappear into thin air. And then the book ends with Carrie showing up with Batman copycats, throwing a brick at Darkseid's head, which causes him to bleed. And there's like a hoorah moment where it's like, we will stand up, and because we're individuals. And this is not, as far as I know, this is a one-shot. It says the end. So presumably Frank has to come back for Dark Knight 4 or whatever, because there's kind of like cliffhangers here. Ultimately, this was like, it was pretty terrible, but it's definitely worth flipping through for the art. It's the same as there was like a side story for DK3 called Dark Knight Returns: The Last Crusade, which was a like 80-page one-shot with John Romita Jr. art and starring the Joker and stuff. And that's also worth flipping through for the art. Nothing beyond that. I'm happy that I read it, but there's not much more positive.
How's Joker alive if he broke his own neck in Dark Knight Returns?
I don't think it's the same Joker.
Right. Everything you just said just reinforms my thought process of we don't need more Dark Knight Returns universe anything besides its original version.
Do we need more Frank Miller anything?
Not in 2019.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think Dark Knight Returns was fine on its own, but I think some of them are worth dipping into just to flip through, because DC thinks they're this like huge high profile thing, so they sometimes do interesting creative things on them. I mean, I half ironically, but I think Dark Knight Strikes Again is very interesting artistically. But DK3 was pure hackery.
Well, Frank only did covers for that one.
Yeah, well, he did little mini comics too. That's like where you get that 2-page splash with Superman's bulge and the Atom. But yeah, no bueno.
All right.
On to Good Batman.
Yeah, on to Good Batman, which is Tom Taylor's second book of the week here. Detective Comics number 1017, Tom Taylor and Fernando Blanco. So we open up with an orphan from the Martha Wayne orphanage, and he's run off and Lucius Fox, which I'm just going to come out and say, this must be taking place post Tom King run at this point, because Lucius Fox is the one who's looking after Batman, and they had that press release saying that's who's being in the role of Alfred now. So I'm just going to go at face value. This is after Tom King's run at this point, but Lucius Fox informs Batman this is the third time this year that an incident like this has happened, and with all that's happened with Batman and Gotham, he's forgotten to check in on the orphanage, because he also had an open of a flashback of Martha taking Bruce to the orphanage's first opening to show that the Waynes care about the people of Gotham. So he ends up recruiting Robin to help him look for this kid who's out in the middle of the winter in Gotham City, and as the temperature's falling because it's getting colder. So it's kind of becomes a race against time as they find the boy before he freezes to death. And they eventually do, but it's too late. He passes away in the hospital, but not before giving Batman and Robin the information that the children are disappearing from the orphanage, and that the curator or overlooker is actually basically selling them into trafficking. At least that's what it's implied. So Bruce then confronts the head of the orphanage with that information, and he knows that he's covering it up. He just flat out punches him out as the cops arrive, and justice is served. And then he and Damian christen a new orphanage in Miguel's honor. I thought this is really good. Fernando Blanco's art was a little bit reminded me of Matt Wagner a little bit. Some beautiful sequences of them trying to look for Miguel as the snow and the temperatures falling, as each panel gets like more and more blurred with the incoming blizzard, which I thought was a great kind of device for the story. But this is really, really good. I really like this issue. Another fine one-off by Mr. Taylor here.
Yeah, I have pretty much the same thought. And there's some fun moments too. There's bits of levity where Bruce tells the kid that his favorite superhero is also Superman.
Yeah.
And I liked how this issue, like, ultimately was a Bruce Wayne story.
Yeah.
And lots of Batman fans love when they do that. And again, having not read all of it, I feel like that's not been a major thing in Rebirth.
No, it hasn't. Not at all. It seems that I don't know if major Batman fans now really like seeing Bruce Wayne at all. It seems that Batman now he can't be shown as weak in any instance possible, and we don't care about Bruce Wayne at all, which I don't understand. So I thought this was more than fine, though. I thought this was really great.
Yep.
So, Matt, you didn't read Detective, did you?
No, I did not.
I told you to read it.
You did, but I didn't.
That's because I thought you'd like it. But Buffy and Angel, Hellmouth #3, the crossover that just won't end. Jordi Belair and Jeremy Lambert on writing, and Eleonora Carlini still on art. They're battling Drusilla and the Hellmouth, and Buffy and Angel get separated again. This is like it's the third issue of this series, and they get separated from each other every single issue. It's starting to get old. As Drusilla reveals that Angel was present the night that Drusilla turned Xander to a vampire, which makes Buffy not trust Angel at any point. But because that's the only friend she has down there in hell, she goes, maybe I should trust this guy. And she does eventually go back to try to team up with him. Angel meets this demon named Augie who's just making the stew. And it's like, it stops the action for just kind of like this kind of brief comedy sequence of like this just demon stirring a stew down in hell. But he's also an oracle, revealing that Angel's actual biggest desire is that he wants to be human again, but he can't make that happen. They're eventually attacked by more just like hell demons. But eventually he's able to meet back up with Buffy, but Buffy sees him and is like his vampire face. So now that she knows he's a vampire and definitely doesn't want to trust him at all, and she's already like getting ready to fight him the next one. This was good. I think this whole crossover though was not planned well. Like knowing it's going to go until February makes me like just want it to be over soon. But I will say Eleanor Carlini's art still continues to be really, really good on this, and Jordi Belair, Jeremy Lambert still have a great handle on the characters. I still like the Buffy line from Boom.
Cool.
No comment.
No, I don't read. I've never watched an episode of Buffy.
Anytime I talk about these books, I'm talking to dead air because you don't read these.
No.
Talking to all our fans. All right, Ghost Rider #3. This is an issue drawn by Juan Frigeri. We open with stuff that I guess is going to come up next. This is a subplot where Chief Hellhawk, who is the Ghost Rider in America in 1654, he's killed by a new character, Necrosis. And Necrosis is a messenger of Belasco, and he's passing along word, even though he just killed this guy. Mephisto needs to stay out of limbo. So who knows what that means, 300 years later. But also, they didn't really, there wasn't a ton of exposition, but it'd be interesting if Necrosis is set up as like a Spirit of Vengeance analog for Belasco. Like if a lot of these Hell Lords had different kinds of like avatars in that sense. Because originally the Ghost Rider was linked to Satan, but then through retcons it was Mephisto. And then Danny was dropped in the water off the Brooklyn Bridge by Johnny last issue, and he's pulled out by Caretaker, who is a character from, the original Caretaker, her father, is from Howard Mackey's run, but she is from Jason Aaron's run, and Chief Hellhawk was from Jason Aaron's run. So again, I like how this series is melding all of the Ghost Rider lore, which is something that Jason Aaron's run, like on the surface, was supposed to be about, but it wasn't at all, in my opinion. But we were getting a lot of Jason Aaron stuff. We're getting a lot of Howard Mackey stuff. And then obviously in the Absolute Carnage tie-in, we got like Alejandra in that era. And Other subplots, we see Lilith preparing her army to retake Hell, and Johnny is tracking down some of the escaped demons and heading to Vegas, where Doctor Strange has had Mephisto locked up since Damnation, which again is, we're pulling relevant continuity from all over the place. And then that's basically what happens. Like, not a ton happens here. There's also a bit of heart-to-heart between Danny and Stacy Dolan, I think, his ex-girlfriend from the 90s. So it's kind of, this was kind of a building issue. Not a ton happens, but I do want to note that the cover very prominently has Mephisto on it. Mephisto does not appear in a single panel in this issue. Kind of annoying. But also, I'm not sure. It's possible that some parts of the beginning of the series have been slightly moved around and tweaked due to Aaron Cooter's injury, and how they may have had to rearrange things artistically or in terms of the plot. And in the back, I do want to note that continuity-wise, they do point out that the next issue is actually going to be that incoming one-shot. There's going to be something relevant to Ghost Rider, and that portion will be Ed Brisson and Jason Aaron teaming up, and then back into number 4. So I'm interested. I'm not sure when Incoming comes out. It might be next week. Honestly, we might not read it on this show. It might be a skip week, which we'll get to at the very end of the show. But I'll read it, and just based on like how quote unquote important it is, we may figure out some way to handle it regardless. But I thought this was another strong issue of Ghost Rider.
Yeah, it's continuing to be a kind of a breakout hit for us as Ghost Rider fans. I would like to see Danny get off his ass and do something, because he has just kind of sat around and been thrown around a little bit in this series. But I do like that Brisson clearly gets the lore, and he is a Ghost Rider fan. I can't think of a better kind of headed writer for this, because you need a person that, number one, cares and isn't trying to reinvent the wheel, but still putting new ideas and has a love for these characters, which is what I like and respect about it. I am still waiting for something to happen. I do like what we're doing with Johnny Blaze, though, right now. And I did like Danny in this issue. I thought the conversation he had with his ex-girlfriend, it was really, really good. And I'm excited to see what next, though I am worried. I don't know if you saw, Vince, but I think in like Ghost Rider number 5, he's getting a new costume. And the cover was on the solicits, and that it's hidden, so you haven't seen. We don't know what it looks like yet, and I'm so scared.
It'd be hilarious if it was just like a one-off troll, like maybe it was a flashback issue, and it's the yellow and orange jumpsuit from the late 90s. But for like one issue, because that would actually be cool. Like if it was like a one-off, like here's a flashback showing this reference to this ridiculous.
Was Wolverine and I think Captain America are both on the cover of that issue.
Yeah, and there's also they're building as well to a Hearts of Darkness sequel with Punisher and Wolverine. So I'm interested to see that. I'm excited. I mean, my only nitpicks for this series are some of the design stuff. Like Johnny now as the Hell Lord with like a crown's like horns on his skull.
I like that. It's kind of showing how he's being transforming into like the ruler of Hell. I like that as the crazier he gets, the crazier his look becomes, because when you saw him originally, he still looked like Johnny, but like he just had the flame crown, and now it's his kind of skull is morphing. I like that though.
Yeah, and then my other design nitpick is on Lilith, who they've like, she's just like generic like demon chick now. She used to be like ridiculous 90s bad girl conehead with fire out of her head. But I'm still very much enjoying it. And moving on and kind of sticking in the horror realm of sorts, I checked out the Hack Slash 15th anniversary special. This is Tim Seeley's obviously 15 years running independent creation, starring Cassie Hack. and she's a slasher hunter. But this is like a world where slashers are like these like supernatural forces who come back from death and stuff like that. I mean, as they do in their respective franchises. And the main story here is from Tim Seeley, of course, and it's very meta. He's at a C2E2 panel with some of the other creators from Hack/History, and it's moderated by a guy who runs the real life major fan site for the series. Not major, but the fan site. And of course, Tim Seeley is from Chicago. He's based in Chicago. He came into the game working on various things for Devil's Due, and that was the initial publisher of Hack/. And it's weird because the way he does the meta aspects is that he writes himself as being a little bummed out. He's like complaining about how his fans only like Hack/, like they don't like any of his other indie creations, and they never seem to like overly praise his big two work and things like that. And all that people want to know is when the movie's getting made, which frustrates him. And then he's confronted by Mary Shelley Lovecraft, which it's, just an amalgam of like, the obvious. And it's just like a chick with a sewn up face and tentacle arms. And she comes out of his TV, like Ring style, and she makes a deal with him. And in exchange for basically taking his next creation, so like say like whatever image book he would come up with next, she takes that from him fully, and in exchange Cassie will become real. And he's a little drunk and tired. It's like 2 a.m. He's been watching TV, fell asleep. So in his mind and his like bummer attitude, he's like, oh, that means a movie's gonna get made. So he's like, yeah, let's shake hands. But of course, Cassie then jumps out of a comic in Challenger's Comics and Conversation, which is a real life store in Chicago, and the owner of Challengers, who actually, I forget the right word, was like the minister or whatever that role is at Tim Seeley's wedding. He comes face to face with Cassie, and there's the guy's like, hey, you jumped out of a comic, like how does that work? Can I meet Captain America? And then he's like, actually, I'd like to meet Vampirella. I know you've crossed over with her. And then meanwhile, Tim, woken up and kind of forgetting that this happens, or thinking he's going to get the movie, goes to teach a drawing class at a cartoon museum. And it says like the Scotty Young Museum of Comic Art. I don't think that's a thing. I Googled it, but Scotty Young has appeared as a real life figure in Hack/Comics like since 15 years ago. In fact, I think canonically he was actually the continuity might not make sense, because I think canonically Scotty Young was murdered in like the first arc of this book. And so was Steve Niles, creator of 30 Days of Night. And also, he's still thinking about movie stuff. So Tim Seeley reveals that his latest fan / I guess creator casting for Cassie Hack is Caitlin Dever, who recently starred in the movie Booksmart. And film fans might also know her from Short Term 12. She was the girl who had like the octopus monologue with Brie Larson. I think I liked her in Booksmart. I know Mike just recently saw Booksmart.
I was waiting for your Booksmart reference today, and I was like, there it is.
I think she might. I mean, assuming she's remotely interested, she's talented and charismatic, that she could do some kind of genre role for sure. I would be into that. And then Cassie attacks Tim Seeley because she's like, hey, I am in a horror comic. My life fucking sucks. My mother turned into a crazy slasher and murdered everyone, and I had to murder my mother. So fuck you. And it just gets even more meta when Mary Shelley Frankenstein, or Mary Shelley Lovecraft, shows up with another edgy brunette, which stabs Cassie Hack. And the idea is that this is the new character, which is a toned down, like more palatable marketable version of Cassie Hack who could actually get a movie. But Tim Seeley turns it around, and he's like, actually, it wouldn't work anyways, because like that kind of watered down version, the comic fans who have to support it in the first place, they'd see right through it, and it would only run 5 issues and get canceled and never remembered. And Mary Shelley at Lovecraft was like, oh shit, you're right. Let me go make a deal with Teenie Howard, who's a more promising writer. And of course, Teenie Howard, before she like very recently blew up on currently writing Excalibur, which is like technically one of Marvel's best-selling books, she did a run for Tim Seeley on Hack/Slash called Hack/Slash Resurrection for 12 issues, while Seeley was focusing more on Big Two stuff. And Cassie Hack jumps back into the comic, and there's a cool meta moment where, you know, they Photoshop in like panels from all the different arcs and everything. And Tim, also kind of in a bummer moment, is like, I've never made anything as good as you. But I do want to note that his other indie book, Revival, does have a movie in development. So Tim Seeley's life is not totally bumming out. There's 2 other short stories in here that I don't really have anything to say about. And then there's some text pages with random factoids from this guy named Gregory Elner, who's literally just like, he writes for like comic websites, like he's written for like Multiversity and stuff like that. But he's like a huge Hack/Slash fan, and basically just like this. I'm joking with the word choice here, but he basically like bullied or like not trolled, but he like annoyed himself into being like a contributor to the Hack/Slash comic, because he's just like such a nerd and obsessed with the book that he can put together a fact page where it's like, here are the total list of publishers that Hack/Slash has gone through crossovers and foreign like reprints, and here's every weapon that Cassie's ever used in the book, and like every character that she's crossed over. And there's like a reading order page with every collection and what's not collected. It's a double page spread. And I don't know. And then there's a bunch of pinups. Not by like many huge people, but maybe that was like intentional. Maybe he wanted like people that have a history with the book. But I've read like, there are 6 omnibuses, which are basically like epic collections. They're like thick paperbacks. I've read the first 2, I think, and it's very much like Bad Girl, like edgy. The art's especially early on, the art's not always like top tier. Obviously, it's published by Devil's Due, and it's like some guy's indie creation in the early 2000s. But I think Hack/Slash is really fun, and I would recommend people check it out, especially if you're into horror and like slasher lore and stuff like that. And I don't even like horror, so I just wanted to spotlight this. That's that. You guys should check out Hack/Slash at some point.
I mean, that issue sounds wild.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. He went Grant Morrison with it.
All right, so I'm going to talk about the Immortal Hulk number 28. This is written by Al Ewing with art this week by Tom Riley and Matthias Bargera. This issue focuses on the Minotaur and an unnamed middle-aged man. The Minotaur is trying to recover from the fiasco that Hulk caused. And Roxxon is basically in the toilet, so he's trying to recover from that. And the middle-aged man is struggling with his daughter being just a dirty liberal. His daughter shows up at his place of work because he works for a Roxxon subsidiary as part of a group of protesters in Hulk masks, and the man nearly shoots her. But then the Hulk drops out of the sky and saves her, and he tells the man that his way is over and he lives in the Hulk's world now. Meanwhile, the Minotaur goes to Monster Island, and he talks to Zemnu the Living Hulk, who's a character I'm sure we're all familiar with, in order to recruit him, because he's decided the solution to this liberal terrorist Hulk is to get his own conservative Hulk. That's basically what this is. And it's fantastic. This issue is so good. Like every issue of this book, It's amazing. Yeah, that's what I've got. Mike, I believe, read this as well.
I did. So shout out to Tom Riley. His first, what we thought his first Marvel work was last week with the Thor Worthy one shot. Vince talked about it a little bit. Where we're big fans of him on his social media page. Give him a follow on Twitter because he's a great artist. His Hulk was fantastic.
Oh yeah,
his Hulk was fantastic, and he only shows up with like a couple panels, but it was great. Matias Bergera also was great. One of the best art books I've seen so far this year. Joe Bennett absent for this issue, obviously, but I think there's now only the third time he's been gone, and it's always a thematic reason for why he's gone.
Yep.
So yeah, I was worried it was going to get a little heavy-handed with the Rock's news and the other things like it, but the commentary made sense and it was good, so it wasn't like on the pendulum. If the pendulum swings, it's not so far where it's just like I know what you're doing. It's I know what you're doing, but it's actually smart and good about it. Right. So that's the important part. But I thought, yeah, this and it's one of my favorite issues as we entered like this second big act for him, and Ewing on this book, and the Planet Hulk line was really really good.
Yes.
So we still have not seen that particular version of the Hulk yet in this run, but maybe that callback's enough because I'm not very interested in going back and exploring that version of the Hulk anyway. I'm much more interested to see what we're going to do with Zenmu and the current Green Hulk. So
yeah, I'm real excited. There's some serious like social commentary stuff going on, which in the wrong writer's hands could be really heavy-handed, especially with a character like the Hulk. But I think Ewing balances it perfectly. It's just there's been 28 issues of this book, and 28 issues have been amazing. I don't know how that's possible. I really don't.
Yeah, when I don't know if you'll be on when I think we'll talk about what our plans going forward with the show are as we enter the holiday season when we do the best of show. That's what I think what our tentative plan is cool. Something like that, or just talking about our favorite comics of the year. There's no way that you can leave this off the list. I've seen a few articles online this week. This is already making the best of the decades list, which I don't think is a wrong decision, but I don't know. It was 2019 when it came out, or late 2018, but I think it does deserve to be up there. I think I always flip flop. I think this Zdarsky's Daredevil, and maybe one other book that I can't remember at the moment are like the best books at Marvel right now. Sure. Between this and Zdarsky's Daredevil, though, is the one that I keep flip flopping on. But if you keep getting issues like this, it's hard to not go, well, this is the best book that's being put out by Marvel, and arguably maybe the big two right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. Right. I love it.
So that's your what bi-monthly love of Immortal Hulk?
Yes.
That's what happens.
Every time Immortal Hulk comes out, I'm going to be here ranting about it because it's just so good.
All I want to say is that Zenmu, the Living Hulk, first period in Journey into Mystery number 62. That's pre-Fantastic Four number 1 by Stan and Jack. If you want to read that, you can check out the Marvel Monster Beast Volume 1. And what's funny is that so people who dig around, they know that Stan and eventually other Marvel creators, they basically took like good names that were used in the 50s and 60s and used them on other characters that they were hoping were going to stick around longer and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like Doctor Strange, there was a previous Doctor Strange and things like that.
Human Torch is the obvious one.
Yeah. But what's funny about Zenmu is that, once Hulk was established and everything, but then you started having like these nerdy writers who wanted to bring back a lot of that monster stuff, and a lot of that stuff where it makes sense for Hulk, but there was now a Hulk that was a major character and popular. So for a long time, he was renamed Zenmu, the Living Titan. But now we've reached a stage of like an irony stage where it's like sure, let's acknowledge that there are two Hulks, but they're not related. Or maybe they are. I don't know what Al Ewing's going to do. And also, I think it is interesting. I don't read this book, but I feel like there have been more political themes over the past like half year or 2 months, however fast these come out. And I mean, it makes sense. Al Ewing's background, people should recall or know that he's a British writer and he comes from 2000 AD and Judge Dredd and that kind of stuff. So it totally makes sense that he'd bring in those kinds of elements on some of his mainstream books.
Yeah, it's really picked up with like number 26, I think. All right, so now we're going to talk about New Mutants number 3. This is written by Ed Brisson with art by Flaviana. So we got a little taste of Brisson before he takes over the book with number 13 or whatever, after Hickman leaves. And this issue is a little break from our usual team. Now we're following Armor, Glob Herman, and 2 extras. I assume they're established characters, but I personally don't know who they are. And they realize that Beak and Angel have not been in any Dawn of X books yet. So they decide they're going to go pick them up. Turns out those 2 have been living with their kids that they had at the end of Morrison's run out in Nebraska. Because Beak's dad has a rare form of dementia. And for some reason, there's an entire text page in this book explaining the disease, which I have been sort of supportive of these text pages so far. I know the rest of you have not liked them. And this was the first one that I hated. The first of 2 this week that I could not stand. It adds nothing to the story. It was thrown into the book before we even knew what Beak's dad had, so it came out of nowhere. It's just stupid and bad. But anyway, Armor and company cure Beak's dad because they've got some Krakoan miracle drugs. And everyone's real happy, but then turns out the kids have been kidnapped by some anti-mutant militants, and they want some miracle drugs as well. Armor tries to get the kids back, but they shoot her with some power-dampening blast, and so she's down for the count, and everyone's got to go inside and talk things out, and that's where the issue ends. Overall, I thought it was really good. It was really nice to see Armor and Glob Herman. I like them a lot, as well as Beak and Angel, honestly. But my biggest problem with this issue is that text page. That really brought the whole thing down for me. Other than that, I thought it was a solid issue.
Now, I agree. The text page was not great, but I thought the issue was good, and it did focus on some of the younger characters. Though the detail text page that I did like was the breakdown of the sextant, where it showed where all the young mutants live. So
yes,
like,
I like that too.
Kind of like, all right, Generations X here, New Mutants are here, New X-Men's here. I liked all of that. That was cool.
That's the type of like text page or graphic page or whatever you want to call it. That's the type I like. The type where we give you a Wikipedia article on some dementia. I don't care.
I do like the fact that we took a break from our space team, and this book is allowing us to focus on the other young mutants that really haven't showed up yet in any other books.
Mm-hmm.
And then it plays into, I don't know who the team of this book is because we keep changing casts.
Yep.
It's kind of like Rob Liefeld's X-Force, where you had an away team and a home team, and it was a flip book. But instead, Ed Brisson is writing when they're on Krakoa, and Hickman is writing the space team, which I think is.
That feels like a disrespectful comparison, but sure.
It's nice to see Boom Boom as well. She gets some fun character stuff here, but she's going to be a bigger deal in the next issue, I think.
Well, she wanted an adventure, and it looks like she got one.
Yeah. I thought the real emphasis on like fleshing out this disease was weird. I really honestly don't care, so I didn't think to Google whether it's actually real. I assume it probably is, but honestly, the fact that they got in so deep and devoted this full page to this disease, which may be real. I was fully expecting the last page to have like some weird dedication where Ed Brisson is like, tributing his like father or mother-in-law or something like that.
And if that was the case, then I'd get it. But instead, it has no relevance to the story. He could have had AIDS. It would make no difference.
Yeah, you're right. It would make no difference because the miracle drug cures all. I will say that my other gripe with this issue was that this is the second use in 2 weeks of, the mutants have gotten hit by a power dampener thing. So everyone has power dampening things now.
Did you know mutants are immune to AIDS? Well, HIV.
Well, yeah, you've talked about this before with me.
That's a Chuck Austin thing.
Yeah, it's a Chuck Austin thing.
I think it's
nothing. Go ahead.
I may have brain farted and missed when you did this, but I think it's also worth noting that this is another of the Dawn of X series where we have our first fill-in or like non-lead artist.
Yeah.
This issue is Flaviano instead of Rod Reese.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the art was still fine, but obviously I still also like a consistent book. But it's just impossible with the velocity of these books.
Yeah, and we talked about that last week briefly, where they have flooded the market to the point where 3 books is just too much. I think on what next week, I think we have 4.
Oh, come on.
I think we have 4.
Well, I'm only reading like 3 or 4 of these personally, so whatever.
Well, me and Vince have only dropped 1. The only one we've dropped so far is Fallen Angels.
Yeah, but it's also pretty fast, and that book's ending anyways. But on that note, the other actual book we read, X-Force number 3. We open with some Attack on Titan looking shit. Wolverine and Quentin Quire and Domino are still in this like medical Frankenstein base, and giant muscle man attacks them. And Quentin is kind of questioning Xavier's new ideals and rules. And Logan's like, chill out. But it's interesting that we're finally getting that kind of thing. We haven't seen that many characters question the new status quo, which I think was overdue. Like I was waiting for that within House of X. But we get some of that here. And then on the same level, Beast is tugging on those same strings where he's talking to Jean and he's asking, both philosophically and like psychologically, like what does it mean that death doesn't matter to us, especially if we can resurrect Xavier with not much sweat. And Jean has, of course, her weird perspective on it, where she's not scared of death because she's done it a few times. And she makes this sort of logical point where the idea that death is like, or at least the fear of death is an individualistic thing. I don't know. It's not 100% fleshed out in my view, but it makes sense within the story. I don't necessarily agree with it. And then on Krakoa, the assassins that took out Charles, the last one dies and all their bodies have apparently combusted. And there's like a shadowy scene, so maybe there's someone on the inside of Krakoa. And Charles is back, so that was ultimately not super dramatic. And I think it is cool to see when Domino has showed back up that she has like where her skin was all ripped up and everything, she has like plant-based casts, like from Krakoa, presumably, or I don't know. I don't think there's a connection there to Healer, who is like Krakoa's like, or Cecilia Reyes, who are like Krakoa's resident doctors. But I guess it's Krakoa related. It could be related to Black Tom. And I feel like the end of this issue, we finally get the setup for this book, which goes back to Mike's question earlier. And it's interesting because this book felt like the one with the least clear setup. And I think overall, and I'll get to we'll get to like in Matt's thoughts in a second. But I feel like this series has kind of climbed the highest among all the series as far as my reaction to it as it goes forward. While it's still not my favorite, but it's crawled up the ranks. And we finally get the setup where Charles is basically like, I don't know, I guess we do need a strike team, even though like 2 of the other books have the exact same premise, but whatever, at least this book has one now. And the masked anti-mutant group, they like fully half introduce themselves at the end of this issue, and their name is Xeno. So across some of the books, I mean, across here, and then in X-Men, we have the horticulture. They are building up a few new like villain groups and villains. So that'll be interesting to see, especially since obviously, 51% of the traditional villains are no longer villains, except for Sabretooth in the bottom of the island somewhere.
Well, and that brings the question. He's on the cover of Hellions, so is that
No.
Sabretooth?
That's not him. That's okay. Wild Child.
Oh. Okay. All right.
Thank
X-Men. God, you know that. No, this is like climbed up to my second favorite of the books. I really like X-Force, which makes me more excited for Ben Percy's Wolverine, because I think it's a really great Wolverine.
Yes.
And I like the art here. I like it. It's kind of grimy, but I like it. And eventually we finally get our X-Force after the 3rd issue. But I like the members of this. I'm worried for these villains because it is a little Court of Owlsy.
That's my thought exactly. Yeah.
I was like, let's not screw this up is kind of my thing with it.
I like this issue. I think X-Force has come a long way, considering I basically hated the first issue. It's not even in my top 3 X-Men books right now, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it. What I don't like is the one text page where instead of showing us in this comic book we're reading, Charles Xavier coming back to life and meeting people for the first time, it's just a prose page.
Yeah.
Fucking why? Would you do that?
Wouldn't it be a lot cooler when it was talking about him getting the Cerebro sword? We actually saw him get it instead of just reading about it.
Wouldn't that have been awesome?
Yeah,
in this comic book I'm reading? What is going on? I hated that more than the fucking disease thing, but whatever. This issue was strong. I like the art.
Because we haven't talked about Superman.
Right. I like the art. Like you said, I love his voice for Wolverine, and so I'm looking forward to that book. And X-Force is a book I'm going to keep reading, which surprised me because after the first issue, I thought I was done.
Yeah, I guess I'll very quickly give my updated rankings at this point. Marauder's still the top. I think, Marauder's at the top. X-Force second, and then X-Men 3, and I might have New Mutants above X-Men. Like have them tied somewhere because I like both. Sure. And then Excalibur is at the bottom right now, and then of course we dropped Fallen Angels, so Excalibur is the one that's hanging on by a thread. I am going to read at least to the first arc and make my decision from there, though. I already said that, though.
Okay. For me, it's Marauders, New Mutants, X-Men, X-Force, and that's all I'm reading.
I think I'm the same, but I'm reading Excalibur, and I don't dislike Excalibur.
I think Excalibur's fine. It's just not for me.
Yeah, I think all the books besides Fallen Angels are pretty strong. All right. I forgot to mention that the text page, I really hated that. And that has potential to have been a great character moment. And you could have fit that on one page. It wasn't a constraint of space. A good artist could definitely do at least the sword part between Magneto and Xavier, they could squeeze that in 6 panels, let alone more. And that was totally unnecessary.
It's completely baffling decision. I don't know why they went with that.
All right, so Ocean Master, you're the villain. written by Dan Waters and drawn by Miguel Mendoza. I don't know how to say the name. So it turns out that Ocean Master Orm has a girlfriend and adopted son, not legally, but she has a son that he is cool with in Louisiana. And I didn't know this, but apparently this was teased in Forever Evil, and then years later followed up and expanded in Dan Abnett's Mara miniseries, which I haven't gotten around to reading that full run yet. But he abandoned this kind of adopted family of his to protect Atlantis during the Drowned Earth crossover with Justice League. But at the end of that, despite, helping defend Atlantis, he still gets discarded by Mara's regime. And so he ends up living as a homeless man in like depths of Atlantean society, and hangs out with this guy who like might be crazy, and tells him about this like fable, and they escape, but then they run into Marine Marauder, who is like a D-list Aquaman villain, who gets juiced up by Lex off panel, and so she can like just like fuck around with marine life, like just totally manipulate their DNA. So suddenly Orm's new buddy has a clam for a head, which is a just kind of dumb visual, but it's kind of fun. And they go to the bottom of the ocean to find this water elemental chick, and like people are. It's kind of like a siren thing. Like people are drawn to the bottom of the ocean. There's just this stack of skeletons, but Orm can survive the depths because he has Atlantean blood and royal blood and all that whatever. And he's like, hey, let me get you out of here. And she's like, all right, let's go fuck some shit up. And so this water elemental chick, they go back, they destroy Marine Marauder and her oil rig. And Ocean Master founds the new city of Dagon, named after his other friend who died. And it's an underwater nation, city-state, and it's for the purpose of like discarded and outcast Atlanteans. But he's also like totally their king and has a throne and everything, and they all bow to him. And Lex Luthor shows up out of nowhere. I guess this still takes place like before the like climax of the Justice Doom War, because Lex is just there to troll him and be like, hey, you killed one of the people I give an offer to. I don't actually care. Do you want an offer? JK, not giving it to you because you're a selfish little prick guy. But then Orm's like, I don't give a fuck. He destroys the amulet, which allows him to control this water elemental, but she's cool with him anyways. And they flex on Lex Luthor, and then Lex Luthor disappears. And kind of the message here is that Ocean Master, he's always a king. He doesn't have to be on the throne of Atlantis. He doesn't have to be fighting Aquaman. He just has that attitude. And also, Lex Luthor better not fuck with the oceans. And I'm assuming that's not coming up again. But the weird thing is that I mentioned that girlfriend and an adopted son earlier, because this entire issue was expository, like flashback of him info dumping all of this to this woman that he's shown up to say hi to again. And that's really my only criticism, is that it's a little bit of a stretch that she sits there and listens to him like literally monologue for what had to take hours, describing his entire like past several months of life, which have been very hectic. So that was a little clunky, especially since it like interrupts like every once in a while, but not often enough for her to say like, why are you telling me all this? I don't care. Stop. Go away. But also she's like still loves him. But he's like, I could, give you guys powers, figure it out, and you could come, reign with me as the royal family. But she's not really that interested in it. So he's like, well, I am a king, so I got to fuck off, even though I came here to tell you all this. And so she's like, bye. And then he makes like a weird threat to her, sort of, where he's like, oh yeah, by the way, your son, which is not my son, is my heir. And she takes that as a threat where it's like, he's going to come at some point and like steal her son and to be his underwater royal heir. And it does say that this is continued in the pages of Aquaman. So I'm interested to see where it actually comes back around. I actually really enjoyed this issue. It was a great kind of villain spotlight. I think it's one of the better Year of the Villain one-shots, mostly because a lot of the one-shots have to do with people actually accepting Lex's offer, and like 99% of those I don't like. And so this was someone like giving Lex the middle finger, which was fun. And I know they're not going to do it, but since it says collected, continue the pages of Aquaman, it'd be great if they actually collected it with Aquaman issues in collections, but they're not going to. That's Ocean Master. If you're reading Aquaman, I'd definitely check it out.
All right. Punisher Soviet, #2, Garth Ennis and Jason Burrows. Frank learns that the man he's come face to face with in the bar of all these murdered patrons is Valery Stepanovich. Frank and Valery get to talking up to speed on each other, and they both realize they're after the same target, who is the Russian mobster Konstantin Prochenko. They hit one of his supply convoys as they scouted on top of the roof, and then they just, they get in Frank's van, stop for some ramen, and they're eaten by a peer. Valery reveals that he's been hunting Prochenko for a very long time, and even reveals that he is a veteran of the Soviet-Afghan War. It mentions that Frank being a veteran of the Vietnam War, because it's the Max universe, so Frank is still a veteran of Vietnam. And Prochenko was one of his commanders in the war, and Valery wants revenge. And he asks Frank to stay out of this one so he can personally make Prochenko suffer. I thought it was a really good conversation of these two characters, of Ennis basically exploring a person who's like Frank in terms of skill set, but he kind of just wants this one and done, and he'll go away. So I get the feeling, the way I've read Punisher Max, that this isn't how it's all going to play. Frank's probably going to end up killing both of these people by the end of it, but maybe they won't. So there's sometimes that Frank has spared some people. But this continues to be great. Like I said, it's like Punisher Max never ended, and Ennis is just a master with this character. There's not much more I can add to it.
Yeah, I thought this was great. This is a pretty low key. It's a conversation issue outside of the first like 4 to 5 pages. It's just them. Like, it's not even like they're moving around. They're just standing at the pier, eating and talking. There's also some fun like character or like moments of levity where Frank gets mistaken for an Uber driver in his van. So that was hilarious. And then also like Frank is portrayed as like basically straight edge, like he refuses to drink. Meanwhile, this Russian dude is swigging a whole bottle of vodka and everything. And at the very end, he's like, hey, you want to take a drink? Like he tries to push him on it. Yeah, I thought this was good. I think it's an interesting character to bring into a Punisher book, like paralleling someone from a drastically different background, from another country and from another like traumatic war experience and everything. And obviously the Russian parallel is interesting because Ennis's Punisher, I think mostly through Knights. I don't remember how much was covered in Max, but Ennis's Punisher has interacted with Russian characters.
There's the big arc in Max where he Mother Russia, where he goes to Russia to save the girl.
But yeah, I mean, this is it's basically Marvel letting an author, do a character.
Yeah, to continue to step in and play with his toys.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
And this is a perfect segue. Talking about a company who's letting a writer play with their toys.
Okay, Superman, #18, written by Brian Michael Bendis with art by Ivan Reis. So here we go. Superman decides he's going to reveal his secret identity because Bendis wants him to. First, he tells Perry this really sweet silent scene, and then he tells Jimmy in a really sweet wordy scene, except it turns out Lois already told him. He also does a scene with Lois where he finally decides to go through with revealing identity. And that's also pretty good. But overall, it's a dumb issue. And it further proves that Bendis can write a good Superman for like 2 or 3 pages at a time, but his stories overall leave a lot to be desired. His reasoning for revealing his identity is some nonsense about Jor-El that doesn't make sense. And now he has seemingly painted targets on the back of everyone in his life because of some midlife daddy issues. The issue ends with Lex Luthor cooking up some evil shenanigans, so I can't wait for this stupid decision to blow up in Clark's face. Probably by next issue.
Well, yeah.
Actually, it's Bendis. Probably in 10 issues.
Yeah. I will say here that I think, number one, we glanced over the entire portion that was on Rand Thanagar, where Adam Strange is wearing the worst version of his costume ever. So, yeah, Strange Adventures by King can't come fast enough because at least he's in his real costume in that book.
Sure.
And I'm sure his head will turn around like an owl when he reads that book because it probably won't line up. But there's no good motivation for why he would do this, and even saying he still wants to continue to be a reporter doesn't make any sense because the byline by Superman doesn't make sense. You told me I want to steal your line. It's like if Peter Parker revealed his identity and then continued to sell pictures of himself as Spider-Man at the Daily View, it doesn't work.
No.
Like the byline by Superman has no power behind it. Like Clark wants to show that he can still be powerful people. That's the whole point of Clark Kent, to show that the power of truth can still run in the media, and how Superman can still take down people under the guise of Clark Kent. He doesn't always have to be Superman. To a person like Bendis, who says that he loves this character and understands him fundamentally, to have him make this decision makes me show that no, you don't, because that's the whole point of Clark Kent. Especially when I view Superman's Clark Kent, and he puts on the guise of Superman when he needs to. It's not like where Bruce Wayne's kind of always Batman. And Bruce Wayne's more the mask. I'm not going to get into that whole thing, but yeah, fundamentally it doesn't make any sense. And then I was talking to you off air. Perry White, to me, it's kind of like Jim Gordon. I've always kind of viewed that Gordon knows Bruce is Batman. He's too good of a detective to not know. Perry White is too good of a reporter to not know Clark Kent is Superman. But the mutual respect both people have for those individuals outweighs the reason for them to reveal it out of pure respect. So while the scene was good, I did like that scene. I feel like Perry's kind of already known. Like, sure. And then Jimmy, he's friends with both Clark and Superman, a little bit more with Superman, but Jimmy wouldn't care. Like,
no,
that's the other, like, Jimmy would not care. And then, like, the people this puts into, like, Pete Ross, Lana Lang, they're in danger. The Kents aren't alive anymore, but everyone in Smallville that knew Clark Kent certainly is.
Right. And in this issue, he says, "My name is Clark Kent, and I grew up in Smallville," during his big speech to the world. So, all right, Smallville is going to get set on fire soon.
Yeah, and I guess this takes place. And then my last gripe with this is, I guess we just don't care about keeping up with current publishing lines, because Batman still has the yellow outline on his costume. Lex is an Apex Lex, so this just happens whenever the fuck it does, I guess.
Yep.
Which means impacting the rest of the books means nothing lines up.
Whoa, Bendis doesn't care about continuity? What?
Yeah, I will say, Ivan Reis is... I thought this was a really good book by Ivan Reis. I've always been an Ivan Reis fan. I think his strongest stuff was back when he was on Johns with Green Lantern. I think Blackest Night being his like very signature powerhouse of a book, and that's kind of like his totem he can always put up there, because that book is like a tour de force, just great artistic book. But I would say pound for pound, I think Ivan Reis might be the best Superman artist at DC. I mean, like, you don't have Doc Sheiner drawing Superman every week, so like in terms of like regular rotating Superman artists, I would say Doc well, obviously, if I can have Doc Shaner, but I'd say Ivan Reis may be the best guy. Like, I think Ivan Reis draws a great Superman.
Well, and I mean, like, Gleason's doing this now, so
Gleason's not even at DC.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can add it through the track record of Bendis at DC. So he aged up John. He kind of ruined Adam Strange.
Yep.
Superman revealed his identity. He played around with Rogol Zaar and the Jor-El bullshit for an entire year and a half. Leviathan went nowhere. And Young Justice just sent Connor back to another dimension with Warlord after we just brought him back. And Tim Drake has the worst alias in costume ever. What are the positives?
Not to mention that he just straight up interrupted Tomasi's run, which was amazing.
Yeah, that goes without saying. I mean, we talked to the man at the con, and he's still bitter about that.
Yeah. There are no positives. It's really upsetting.
Positive is the art. The art's good.
Sure.
Well, the positives are Wonder Twins, Dial H, and Jimmy Olsen.
But he's not writing those.
I know, but that's the positives. I was going to say.
Sorry, another thing that doesn't make sense for continuity. Jimmy Olsen is in Gotham City.
Well, is he?
Well, the scene he reveals his identity to takes place in Gotham City. So, and I thought that must have happened after this because it lines up more with the Leviathan stuff. I don't know what happens in DC anymore.
Nope.
You know what you might enjoy more than Bendis revealing Superman's secret identity?
The upcoming John Byrne Superman omnibus that's hopefully not going to get canceled.
Well, no, but you said you said.
Yeah.
You said you liked.
Yeah. Well, first off, yes, I really.
Yes.
You said you liked Ivan Reis's Superman. You think he's probably the best Superman artist right now. You should check out his early 2000s run in Action Comics written by Chuck Austin.
No.
Vincent Faust. How do you do this?
I will say he's done an amazing job of not getting a Chuck Austin reference through almost an entire year of doing this show. He got 2 in on this episode near the end of the year. All right.
It's a present to all the boys and girls.
Done with the Bendis rant. I'm going to talk about a book I enjoy with Wonder Twins.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to keep fuming for a minute.
Wonder Twins number 10. Can you believe it's almost over? We only have 2 more issues of this left, and I kind of don't want it to end because it's so good. Mark Russell, Stephen Byrne. So Jan, Jaina, and Polly have enacted their plan to get Polly's father, Philomath, out of the Phantom Zone because he was trapped there by cell phone Sylvia. They managed to steal cell phone Sylvia's phone as she's getting ready to go on Lex's, basically his version of like CNN or Fox News, where both anchors have shaved bald heads, which is really, really funny. They all look like Lex Luthor. So they're like hiding in the office. Zan is the water cooler, which I thought was hilarious. So they're able to steal the phone, and they're able to steal Lex's spaceship. Because Lex, when the Great Scramble happened, he still has himself locked up in space, and the interns for LexCorp are taking advantage of it by not sending him the landing coordinates and just eating great big lunches on the company card, which another just great, hilarious scene. But they do steal the spaceship and go to the Phantom Zone, where Zan's able to free the trapped people inside the Phantom Zone by basically making himself a giant icicle and just like with like a diamond tip and just like hitting it and like it explodes. So they manage to save everyone. So Philomath is now alive and Polly gets her father back. But meanwhile, back on Earth, the Colonel 86 computer program has taken control of the internet back at the Hall of Justice. The rest of the Justice League are kind of going, what the hell is going on? So I'm very excited to see how Mark Russell is going to deal with the Colonel 86 computer communist computer program, because I think that stuff is endlessly hilarious. It is such a whimsically fun comedy book. I can't wait to have it on a shelf completely collected. But that's our books for this week.
Yeah.
Completely collected in 2 books.
Yeah, completely collected in 2 books, or just, custom bind it.
Yeah, it's always an option.
You don't think they're going to do a hardcover?
I don't know. The state of DC's hardcovers apparently are very odd. The deluxe edition hardcover for Scott Snyder's Justice League stuff, apparently paper is super thin to the point where it's like you're gonna rip it if you turn the page.
Ew.
All right. How about run through pick of the weeks?
Right. Vince,
Let's
you
do it.
go first.
Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man.
Really? Wow. All right. Ooh, that puts me. I'm gonna have to go. Mine was a tight contention this week. I could have had like 3 books I could have chose, but I'm gonna go Immortal Hulk.
I have to. Yeah, it's Immortal Hulk. It's
So
so good.
my runner-up would be Detective Comics. So
I'm not sure what runner-up would be. Immortal Hulk again. It's that good.
Okay, and now, so next week we're having a full episode, right?
yes. So I think what our plan is, because we looked at the releases next week and went, well, we can't really skip that because it's it's the last real release week of the year. So we'll do one more regular show, and then sometime over the break, kind of between that Christmas New Year's section, I want to kind of do like a year-end show. Basically, give us maybe 90 minutes to just bullshit and talk about our favorite books of the year. I kind of just an open forum for that. Maybe we can get Ginger Dan back on for that once he did a couple shows for us over the summer.
That'd be awesome.
But yeah, next week final regular show, and then I think after, and then we'll discuss ourselves when we want to come back regular weekly.
And the final retro book of the year is going to be Action Comics Weekly number 636. We've got a Phantom Lady story, and guess who draws Phantom Lady in the 80s? Chuck Austin.
Oh my fucking god.
And we've got
all right, rule of 3s, so you can't say him again.
You got a wild dog. We got a wild dog story and a demon story, and all 3 of those and a Speedy story, and all 4 of those are part 1 of their arcs. Superman was always a 2-page feature in this book, and not on the cover. There's also a Phantom Stranger story.
As far as collections go on this, I believe all of the Action Comics Weekly stuff for Superman is collected in that Power Within trade, and I have read that stuff.
Yeah,
and it's pretty good.
Nothing else from this issue has ever been collected. So we will make a judgment on whether it should be. And I think it'll be interesting because based on the format, I think it's an interesting opportunity for, pending how many hosts we have on the show that next week, we can split up the features to some extent.
Sure.
So that'll be a first. I think so. We may have done that for one of the 50s Marvel books. I don't remember.
Well, we try to. It always comes down to the breakdown. But that's the show for this week. We got one more and then a special. I still can't believe it's almost the end of December.
Yeah, right.
Okay, bye.
Yeah, right. Oh my god.
Bye. Did you hit the button?